All right, for today's session, what we're going to be going through is giving you a quick overall introduction into how to get started with Apptivo's CRM. So we're going to be less focused about what Apptivo is in general. We're going to be really focused in on, now that we've decided we want to go and look at Apptivo and move forward with it, how do we go about selecting the right apps, figuring out how to go and configure them, and what are the features that we need to run through to do this configuration. So for today, what we're going to do is we're just going to take you through with a fresh account, run you through the kind of the thought process that you should execute, and we'll actually go configure a couple examples together. But the core focus of this is going to be to understand what steps that you should run through when getting your CRM set up. So here's kind of the agenda that we have for today. We're going to start off by figuring out what are the right CRM apps. So we know that we want the CRM solution, but that means a few different things in Apptivo. So we'll chat about what each app means and how to select the right apps for you. And then we'll kind of move on through how to plan out, which users are going to be added, how to track the security between them, if you've got data coming from other places, and what integrations you might want to connect. So before you even start setting things up, think about a couple steps. Then we'll move into, the actual configuration. So now that you've gotten into Apptivo, we'll take a fresh account and we'll go through and configure some fields, some workflow items, and select the right apps, that whole process. And then afterwards, which we're not going to cover on this actual presentation today, is going through the process of importing your data to that configured account and then turning on the users and performing your integrations. So we're going to just kind of give you some resources on those last two items, and we're focused really on the first three. But the idea is, overall, this is what you need to get a CRM up and running at your company. So let's start off with selecting the right CRM apps. First, real quick overview, this is Apptivo. We have a bunch of different apps. All the apps on top are available in an app store. So these are the apps that we're going to be selecting from. But each user is also going to be using these collaboration apps. These are common ones. They're not available in the app store. Instead, we're just going to be using them throughout our usage of the CRM apps, which we see up here. So when we're talking about selecting the right CRM apps, it comes down to there's a couple different kind of components of Apptivo, whether you want sales tracking or just a basic digital Rolodex. So we'll hop into that and we'll cover those in just a moment. But whole platform is completely modern. We have a full developer API. Everything is completely mobile accessible as well. So we're not going to have to do any sort of setup for the mobile. All the configuration that we're speaking about will instantly apply. So you just go download the mobile apps on Android, iOS, or Windows, and they will adapt to the configuration that you apply from the web. So now let's talk about the apps that are right for you. There's 4 functional areas that come under CRM when people are looking in Apptivo. And that's the core of its contact management. Everybody today is going to be looking for contact management. Having just an online database of every person and organization that you work with and tracking all the interactions and reminders and notes and files and everything related to them. That's contact management. And there's 2 apps inside of there, contacts and customers. Not everybody's going to use both. Almost exclusively, everybody's going to be using contacts, but then most people are also going to use customers. But this is the core of your database. Everything revolves around these. Now, you also might want to track a sales pipeline. So leads coming in, assigning a stage to them, maybe a probability or an amount, and how likely is this to convert, and then needing to run reports. So if you have a larger sales organization, you're very likely looking at Salesforce automation. So a lot of what people think of when they typically think CRM at a glance is, I want to build a sales pipeline. So both leads and opportunities do that, but once again, you might not use both apps, even if you do want some sales tracking. These 2 are the core CRM. That's what most people are looking for when they think of CRM. But then also marketing and customer support are 2 other areas. We're not really going to dive into those in detail today, just kind of being aware of sending out mass emails rather than just small scale emails. That's something reserved for marketing. So we have targets and campaigns are the apps that power that. And then for customer support, help desk ticketing, or even just basic answering questions or providing a knowledge base, we have the cases and answers apps. So for today, we're going to focus in on these first 2, the core of the CRM. And we have 4 apps. So here's those 4 apps. Now let's figure out how they're going to work for your company. Contacts is pretty easy. Every person you interact with, they're a contact. Doesn't matter who they are. They could work for one of your customers. They could work for one of your vendors. They could be a family member. A lot of people intermingle their business contacts with personal contacts these days. If they're a person, they're a contact. Now, customers, this is where it gets a little bit different. First of all, not everybody tracks a contact versus a customer. If you're a business-to-business organization, You almost certainly will. You will have organizations who are the customers, like the company itself is a customer. So they have a business address, business phone number, things like that. And then you have the contacts, the people who work for that business. It's a clear relationship for B2B. But then for B2C, a lot of the time you're just talking to one individual. You don't have a group of people that you need to group together for these transactions. And this is where, it gets a little bit different. So you don't always use a customer. In B2C, if you don't need to use any of the other Apptivo apps, such as invoicing, and you have no plans to, then you might not need customers at all. You can just use contacts. So I can do my sales tracking and these other apps and everything just with contacts alone. But anytime you deal with multiple contacts in one deal, so let's say if you did one deal and you had to be involved with multiple people, even if they don't work for the same company, even if they're not necessarily part of the same family or something, you could go and create a customer for them. So some common examples would be like, let's say if you're selling physical products to like a cycling group, you could create a customer for the cycling group. And then let's say you're dealing with people at residences, could be real estate sales, for example. You could create like the household or the family name as the customer itself, and then have the family members as contacts underneath. So this part's very much open as far as which ones that you will utilize, but hopefully that'll give you a little taste for how you'll configure it in your example. And then we have leads and opportunities. So there's just the general question of, do you need to track them? I can have a contact and I can just say that this contact has a status of prospect. You don't necessarily need to track leads and opportunities, but certainly if you have a sales organization of 25 people, you have one team of people who are just qualifying leads and one team of people who are moving deals through for a certain product line and maybe a different team for another product line. So in that scenario, it very much makes sense to have separate apps to manage these sales processes. So we have leads and opportunities. And then the idea is a lead can actually be converted. So a lead is somebody you have no relationship with. It's perfect for cold calling. If you've purchased a list of businesses or you attend a trade show and you get a list just like a bunch of business cards, people you've never spoken to before. They're great for leads. And then there's a flow where I can turn a lead into a contact, customer, and an opportunity. But the opportunity is the deal itself. So that's kind of like the overall sales workflow. It's not necessarily unique to Apptivo. Our apps might be named slightly differently, but we did try to keep the standard of the CRM workflow here. So that should give you an idea of which apps that we want to get set up. Now, let's move on to the next step. So in this example that we're going to configure today, we're going to go and quickly look at all of them. We have an electrician. That's the kind of use case we're going to be running through today, is a brand new electrician who's getting set up. It's just him in there. He might have one other user who's just going to be going in and helping him track some basic leads. He does want a sales pipeline, but it's absolute minimal information. So with that in mind, when we're planning out the security data and integrations, it's really going to come down to a couple areas. So first, let's talk security. And really, this question means much less the fewer users that you have. So if you only have a single user, this doesn't matter. You're an admin. You get everything. You can skip this step. But then if you have multiple users, you need to think, will they all have the same level of access? So we can apply access where people only see their own contacts, or maybe a manager needs to see a group of contacts. There's different groupings and such that you can set up here. But the biggest thing is think about, if you do want to restrict access, what are the restrictions? So don't worry about what you're giving access to. Think more about what you want to take access away from, and then we can go and build from there. But the idea is the employees app is where we add users. And when you add them, you'll be able to select a security role. And the security role selects exactly what they can or cannot do within the system. So you'll think about what users are coming in, who they report to, what access they should have. Now you talk about integration. So what else might I need to get connected into the CRM? I am purposefully skipping anything like, let's say, I want project management or invoicing connected. Apptivo has it. You might also have another system. We're just talking about CRM for today. So certainly you might have like another business process system, but we're talking about other supporting systems in the CRM. So these are the 4 common areas that you'll be looking at. Number 1 is our email integration. So lots of people are going to connect their IMAP email. We do two-way syncing, track conversations. We also allow you to send outbound email. Then we have calendar and activities. So with G Suite and then Office 365 is actually coming in the next couple of weeks. Then you have two-way syncs of calendars and tasks for all of your users in G Suite or Office 365. So you have to go in and connect that. And then the phone system. So we actually have an existing RingCentral integration, a couple more on the way that you'll hear about. Or if you wanted to do a custom integration, which the next one kind of talks about that, we do have a full developer API. So many of you are just going to say, no, I don't need any integrations like that. It is fully possible. The idea is that you'll want to kind of think about that right now as far as how you're bringing data in, because when we get into the next step of how you configure Apptivo, you want to make sure, say if you have a form on your website on WordPress and it creates leads, that you configure the right fields inside of Apptivo so they match your web form. That's the idea behind it. So after migrations, think about your data. You could be a brand new startup company. That makes it simple. No existing data. Most people are coming over with some sort of existing either spreadsheets of data, or you're coming over from another system. So you have export files from that other system. The idea is just go ahead and assess all the information you have available. We need to get them into CSV files. So Apptivo can import pretty much any CSV file. And you only really need to do a general check on, does it have first and last name as separate columns? If you're migrating from another system, you don't really have to be concerned with this. If you built the files yourself, you do need to make sure that they're built that in a way a system can read. Otherwise, just a general tip when we're going through and doing the setup is, the next step is actually configuring our fields. So what we want to do when we're configuring, which we're not going to have time on this video, is we're going to want to configure a couple test customers and contacts as examples. So even if you have an import file, don't import the whole thing. Just look at the sheet, create the first contact or two, make sure your fields look right and everything works well, and then just delete it and then import your entire sheet at once. And then we can go import thousands of records. The only other little detail here that you have to be ready for is, let's say on the previous step, you had selected that you want all 4 apps: contacts, customers, leads, and opportunities. If you want different apps and you want to bring data into each one of them, you need to have different files separated ahead of time. So we can import everything and link them all together. Many people are only coming over with one type of data, but you just want to make sure that you think about that ahead of time and you say, all right, well, this is a file of companies and this is a file of brand new leads that I've never contacted before. And then we import them separately. Okay, so that's kind of the overview on data migration. So basically, that's all you have to really think about before we hop in here and get going. Of course, I might have grossly oversimplified that, especially if we're talking a larger organization. Once you break the 20, 25 users, you really need to be thinking about change management. There certainly is a lot more thought that needs to go through that, but for most cases, this is enough for us to just get up and running and hop in there and start configuring. So what it comes down to is just in general, we got to get our apps enabled like we spoke about. So we know which ones we want. Let's go turn them on. Then we'll go set up all of our fields and everything. So remove the clutter, put in anything that we need for our business, and then go change out the workflow. So put in any automations and such, which we'll briefly talk about, but we're not going to focus too much on the how-to of the field configuration and such. I'll refer you on over. There's another video that specifically dives into the details there, but we're just going to kind of show the highlights and a couple examples of each key configuration step that you have to execute. So let's go ahead and let's start getting into the application. Let's start doing some configuration. So let's click on that. Went one step too forward. So I kind of got like a little template that you can work off of here. So the first 2 steps are kind of general things. We're going to hop in here. We have a little bit more planning, but let's get in there and let's get our apps turned on. We know what apps we want. Let's get them set up. Let's get the base navigation properly configured. And then we're going to have to think about what goes across the apps, which is these sales stages. If you don't want to implement the sales process, you don't really have to worry about that, although we'll talk about that in the next step. But yeah, we want to make sure that we plan out these stages that will go across apps just so we can understand how we should configure each app. And then we have a series of steps, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we basically repeat these for each one of the apps that you want to set up. So if you only want one app, it makes your job a little bit easier, but all 4 apps, it's the same exact process and types of features. So you'll see it's pretty familiar in here. All right, so this is kind of our plan of attack. Let's get into the app and let's go take a fresh account. Let's turn on our applications and let's just get our navigation all set and ready to go. So let me switch on over. What we're going to do is we're going to log in as Kent Fenmar here. Brand new account. I just registered it 20 minutes ago before this call. And I've only logged in one time. So this is the out-of-the-box configuration. If you sign up and you just select that you're an electrician and you change nothing. It doesn't really matter what bundle you selected, so don't worry if you picked the wrong business category. From this starting point, we can get anywhere we need to. So, step number 1, we know that we want 4 apps: contacts, customers, leads, opportunities. Let's go turn them on. And then this blue navigation up top, let's make sure it says those 4 in a row. And we have 5 slots, so we're going to add the employees app because we know we want to add our one other user as well. Now to add those apps in, we're going to go to the App Store in the upper right corner here, and then this is where we can add and remove everything. So you'll see it's already added in some others like invoices and such by default. You could turn them off right now if we're not going to use them. If you leave them on, there's not really any harm or anything. It's just going to have an extra option in your navigation. So we go turn those on and off, but the key thing is in CRM, we need to make sure that customers, contacts, opportunities, and leads are enabled. Although work orders can remain disabled. Okay, so we've got those 4 key apps. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that they appear right up here on top in the proper order. So we go in, we click on Preferences, and then we'll move on over to the left and we'll click on Customize Home. Okay. So then on here you have 5 drop downs across the top of the page, and we're going to be able to pick our top 5 apps. In this case, I recommend putting them in a rough order of your process. So for example, I could do contacts, customers, leads, opportunities, and then I'll do employees, which is underneath human resources. So what you'll see is up top, it's just changed my navigation. So what you have is anytime you click this Apptivo logo, takes you to your main agenda where activities will start appearing once you start using. And then I can go in and out of my apps by clicking these links up here. So that's really it as far as setting up and getting your navigation up and running. So let's hop back into the slide deck. The next one was talking about defining your sales stages. So we're about to hop into the leads and opportunities apps. We're going to set up our processes, but let's think about it a little bit ahead of time. So I just want to take a minute and chat about this piece. When it comes to forming your sales process, you might already be coming from another system. You already have the exact stages and statuses and everything that you want. No problem, skip right past this. On the other side, if you're thinking that you're only tracking contacts or only contacts and customers, you still might want to kind of consider this. So the example there is, I'm kind of talking about right here, is you can have this full list of processes. So I've got 2 different sales processes from end to end over here on the right, from a more, like complete standard sales process. So you get some basic contact information, make sure they're interested, and then those are the statuses in a lead. Then we move them to the next stage into an opportunity, and then we have these steps. So we find a decision maker, confirm their purchasing timeline, get some requirements, send out a quote, and close the deal. That's like one example sales process, but you'll see how it splits between the lead statuses and the opportunity stages. So this could just be overkill for your example. Maybe you just want to know whether they're a current prospect, whether they're a current client or a past client. So what you could do is on the contact and customer, we can simply add like a status field and we can track what status they're in there. Or you use the sales applications and we're going to go through and there's 2 fields in these apps. So an opportunity, like the key field of all of this workflow is called the opportunity sales stage. And then in the leads app, it's called the status. But typically your leads are going to be shorter. This will change based on the organization. I mean, there's certain people who they use Apptivo strictly for cold calling, and that's the core focus. So in which case, what I said might be backwards, might be more like this. But in most cases, your opportunities are going to have more stages than the lead will have statuses. But the idea is you should have some sort of indication of, okay, well, I've got people in my database, I've got deals, what stage are they in? All right, so that's kind of the high level detail. Now, the reason that mattered is we just talked about changing a couple of fields in different apps based on the outcome of this. So you want to map out your process, and then we can go put it into Apptivo. But if we look at the kind of previous slide of our process here, we just define them, but we don't actually go through and need to configure them because that's going to come in this next start part of the setup. So this is where each app you're going to run through and we're just going to get it set up for your business. So for today's quick run through, what we're going to be doing is just we're going to change a field or 2. We're going to delete a couple things and we're just going to do it in 1 or 2 apps. We're not going to go change everything. Then I'll just, we'll quickly talk at the end of where you can go find like a complete configuration video. But on here, the idea is we're going to change the master layout. We're going to remove fields and we can adjust any fields that appear. So what data do you capture whenever you view a person, a company, or a deal? Then there's what's called the list layouts. So when I'm searching through a group of people, what columns appear. And then there's what's called views, which are searches. You basically can have saved searches and group contacts and deals together. The last part, which some of you might not even need to look at, is workflow and triggers. So we do have complex workflow building tools, but that's where we're going to go. You configure in the stages and define any standard workflow that would happen. Like, let's say, for example, when I get to a quote stage, I need to automatically go generate a reminder off to the client and one notification internally to our production team, something like that. So this is the cycle that we're going to kind of repeat. Well, let's just give you a quick overview of, like the features and fields. So I've got this little chart up here. First, I want to hop into the app. I want to show you what a contact looks like, and then we'll start to talk about what these fields look like. So we're just going to go into the contacts app, and we know there's nothing in here. Brand new account. So we come in, and just real quick, we talked about three main settings: master layout, list layouts, views. We're going to configure them in that order. They're the same in every app. Makes it nice and simple. The master layout are the fields that you actually store. So when I create this new contact, first name, last name, job title, phone number. The master layout is what fields are we collecting? What order do they appear in? And do we want to add any additional ones? So part of what we're going to do is this form is pretty tall. Kent's just an electrician and I don't really need to track that much. I just want their basic contact information. I want the address that they're located in. That's really about it. So I'm going to remove everything else. That's one big thing that people will do right when they get started. So I'm going to go into the master layout. We're going to remove all the clutter. Then the next step is the list layouts. So right here, once we create our first contact, first name, last name, job title, we're going to be able to change what columns appear here. So we can make sure that the right fields are showing up when we're browsing contacts. The last one is this list over here on the left. So let's say, for example, we're not going to end up using territories. We're just going to turn off this extra clutter over here. So let's go ahead, let's get back into the slide deck real quick. You'll see this is like that overall structure. You'll see there's a bunch of other cool stuff in here. So we do custom fields, we can do triggers. This is the workflow, there's email templates. But the key settings to get going with CRM is just getting your fields, layouts, and views correct. So each app will have the same kind of thing. This is what the master layout looks like. So I'm about to hop in there. We're going to go change the contact. But the idea is there's like a bunch of settings in each app. So we'll hop in here, we're going to navigate over, and then there's just this drag and drop tool. So there'll be a panel over on the right with all these types of attributes that we can create and modify, and then everything else in the middle, we just click on it to modify it. So let's go ahead and let's bring this up on screen. So I'm going to navigate on into the settings, click the three dots up there, then we go to settings, and we're going to expand customize app in the left. You'll notice all three of our key settings right here next to each other. So in master layout, really what it's going to be doing is mostly just deleting stuff. So I'm just going to start going through. I'm going to remove everything that I don't think is relevant. And hey, maybe we just make this incredibly simple. I just get rid of pretty much everything. I'm going to start off just moving things around and removing the things I know I don't want for sure. But I'm leaving some of this stuff in because some of it's nice. And what I want to do is I want to rearrange it once I'm done and put all the important stuff up near the top. So I'm just getting through. So yeah, maybe we leave like date of birth. We have a couple fields right there. So now let's start doing some rearrangement. So let's say we want to move their job title over here. Just click and drag. Move customer up to the top. And phone number and email. Those are important. So we'll slide those on up to the top. And then, okay, maybe we leave the description there, who it's assigned to. And then we're just going to move some stuff around. Basically what I want to do is delete sections. I want to make it less scrolling when I come into the app. So I'm getting everything up into that top section. And maybe we just take this one and you'll notice we can rename anything. So I can call it like system info if I'd like. And you'll notice I can even do little things like controlling when it's opened or closed. You can really get down to the details in configuring this page. Then I'm going to go put some fields down here that I don't think are as important, like automatic timestamps and stuff. And what we're going to end up with after a little bit more tweaking is our completed setup. Okay. So once I'm done, I just save this. I didn't create any custom fields, but I could just add a custom field in over here. So let's just say, for example, we want to add a rating system for how valuable a contact is to us. So maybe we get rid of date of birth. And let's just add a simple 1 to 5 rating system. So we can just say rating, and then we scroll down, and because it's a custom field, we type in whatever values we want. So we could do like 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars, etc. So let's just do 1, 2, and 3. So now, upon doing all this, I save it. You do this one time, it does it for your whole company. So now when I come back in, and if I choose to create a contact again, you'll see here's our brand new form. So as you can see, greatly simplified. That's step 1 of configuring your apps. Step 2 is list layouts. So let's go ahead and let's just create somebody real fast. We don't need much info. We'll just say we got John Doe. John Doe works for Maxilon. And we're going to skip most of the details here. He's got a 3-star rating and 123 street address. All right, so that's enough information. We'll just put some basic details in there. Actually, probably should put a phone number, maybe an email address. I want to put enough information. You'll see the reason is because now when I click on show all, I can see the basic list. But now maybe I want my rating here. Maybe I want the last time I've contacted them here. So that's the list layout. So inside of settings, it's the next setting down is list layouts. Now the trick here is you choose what columns you want. You choose the order that you want them in. But the first thing you do is you remove everything except your first column. So I'll show you what I mean. I want to start with first name, last name. So I'm going to leave these ones checked. I'm going to undo everything else, just temporarily. Now I'm going to re-add them in the order that I'd like. So I want to do the customer name, the job title, then their phone number, then I want my rating, and then I want the last time that I have contacted them. So I add them in the order that I'd like, and now I can resize them just like Excel. So we're just going to shrink them down so that way I can fit all the screen or all the information on one screen. And you'll see the results right there. So we've adjusted our layout. So that's step number 2. Now step number 3, if we come back in here, whoops, did not mean to flip into that, is the views. So I'm just going to remove this extra stuff. So we removed category, territory, and tags. There's no more purpose for them. I'm not going to be using bounce contacts, so we're just going to remove that clutter. Back into the settings, into customize app, and then views. And here, each view can be turned on or off. So we can simply toggle them off for the ones that we don't want. You'll see some other ones are turned off out of the box, but you could turn them on. There's also the ability for you to create your own custom views in here. We're just going to skip past that step. But that's what you can do if you click on this plus sign. Is add your own custom link into the left column. But between those 3, we basically set up each app. I mean, the only next step would be like the workflow and such. So originally we talked about our sales stages, and we said, okay, we need to go configure lead statuses and opportunity sales stages. So in that case, you'll come into leads. Because this is a standard field, you'll see right out of the box, if I create a lead, I haven't done anything, and I have lead status, and there's a couple values in there. So we're going to be modifying the stages that come out of the box. Everybody should modify them. So to modify a standard field, it's called lead status. We go into the settings. Everything's in settings of that app. And in this case, there'll be a section for leads. Just each app has its own section, and then every standard field has its values here. So for the standard workflows, you're just going to hop into here, and you'll see I can drag and drop to rearrange statuses. I can edit any existing status to rename it to what you would like. And I can disable them entirely if I just want to reduce the status count. You can also add a brand new one. So you get full control over the list of statuses. You put them in here. And then in opportunities, there's a lot more workflow tied to your sales stages. But it's the same concept. Out of the box, you have several sales stages. One thing to note is you see how there's a probability in the opportunity. Based on your stage, the probability will change. This is built into your configuration. So head to your opportunities, go to settings, and underneath the opportunities section, we have sales stages. This is the same type of interface. We can drag and drop to rearrange, but you'll see there's additional controls here around the probability. And then for those of you who want to get a little more advanced, if you take a peek into the details, you'll see you can set up advanced criteria of when you can enter or exit this stage. We can automatically create tasks and follow-ups and emails for our reps whenever you enter the stage. And then another workflow element here is there's a feature called triggers. So each app is going to have this generic workflow tool. This is the sort of thing, if it looks incredibly complex, it might not be something you're looking at on day one, but this is how you'd write automation. So when a deal closes, automatically notify somebody. When a deal has not been contacted in the last week, create a trigger that automatically notifies people and tells the sales rep to go and follow up. Things like that. So that's going to be the basis of like your workflow and such. We're going to kind of stop at that point because, today, just about getting a quick introduction to the plan. So you'll run through each one of your applications, configure that standard cycle, master layout, list layout, views, and any additional workflow. The last steps are importing your data, enabling the users, and getting the integration going. So in this case, we're not really going to dive into the details here. I just want to kind of briefly talk about how you'll do it. So you want to add the users first, actually. The previous deck was slightly off, but the reason that's important is when you import your data, you can assign data to users. So you'll add your employees, you give them roles, and you import them. And then you can go to each app, your leads and contacts, etc. You can import the data there. And then once everything's imported and all set up, you can go turn on your various integrations. So you'll see some hyperlinks available right here. And then what I'm going to do is right now I'm going to go ahead and upload this deck that we've been running through today. So in case you wanted to go ahead and just download it for your own reference, you can do so. So give me a few moments on that. And yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up the rest of the presentation for today. So what we'll do is if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. And otherwise, if you'd look for if you'd like any further information about the setup, for example, how to go and configure fields, head on over to youtube.com/Apptivo, and we have a bunch more videos that go in depth on specific configuration topics.